Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Global Foresight Summit. This year is organized by the APF, the Association of Professional Futurists, the World Future Review, and Fast Forward. And we have for this next session David Weigend. David is the Head of Education and the Participation at the Futurium in Berlin. And in this session, he's called Inventing the Future at the Futurium Lab in Berlin. He's going to give an overview of his work at the lab, ranging from future education to speculative design. The lab explores new participatory approaches to the future. So we are really excited to listen what you have to tell us. David, welcome to the Global Foresight Summit.
Yes, thank you. For my presentation today, I planned to give you an overview of our work at Futurium, and especially at Futurium Lab, and I try to make a little bit the connections from our practice in the museums world and to foresight practice. I also worked in the past as a foresight consultant, also in game design, so I have some connections into that, and I hope I can make them in the talk. Otherwise, we of course have the Q&A afterwards, then you can ask questions if you like. So Futurium, it's a new space in Berlin. We opened in 2 years ago, right before Corona, and it's a place where we show possible futures and explore them, test them, and discuss them. And our aim is to empower people to shape the future. For that, the Futurium has 3 levels, so to say. We have a main exhibition where we show the future. We have a forum for discussion, and then the lab in the basement. And here just some quick impressions from the exhibit, from our forum, and then the lab in the basement. The topic of my talk today is inventing the future. So how can we design a future, how to make a creative space where people can come together to think about new possibilities. And the best way to get an idea what a future lab can be is to look at important or famous labs from the past and present. And here 3 examples: the Bell laboratories, where the semiconductor was invented, or the MIT Media Lab, or IDEO as kind of the birthplace of design thinking, which plays an important role also now in foresight practice. And what makes this places special? It's of course about envisioning the future, about having original ideas, about having an open culture, about experimentation, failing, creative thinking, collaboration, provoking spillovers of different disciplines, and then to have a user-centered design approach, especially in the terms of IDEO. And how can we bring these qualities of labs into our own spaces, in public spaces, in museums, but also in consultant agencies and stuff like that? That will be the topic of my talk. And for that, I have 4 sections that are kind of building the Lego blocks of our work at Futurium. Let's start with the mindset we try to provoke. And the first should be quite familiar to you. It's the future cone. For us as future thinkers, it's an old story that we don't have one future, but many possible futures. But for many people out there in the professional sector, but also school children or just normal people, this is the concept we have to get across. And it's especially important because most people think future as prognostics and not as speculation or educated guesses, as we would work in a foresight realm, or as we try to do it in the lab. The next important mindset we try to get across is this pyramid. And it starts with my needs, then the needs of society, and on the bottom of the system Earth. So if you're thinking about the future, the first step is to think about yourself. What is important for me? How do I want to live? And of course, this can be quite selfish, and everybody of us could imagine a jet set lifestyle, which wouldn't be sustainable for the next step, the society. And to thinking about the future of society, we have to ask what is good for the community and from what would society benefit. And then future solutions look quite different. And then on the bottom level, we ask us the question, what are the planetary boundaries, or what does the planet need, or what does other creatures need? So if we talk about the future in Futurium, we try to always include these three levels. And of course, related to that, we try to include systems that are agreed on the future. For example, the global goals from the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals, because it's important to work on a common goal. And we can't invent the wheel all the time new, and we have to connect to political compromises that took a long time to negotiate. So these SDGs are extremely important for us, and also build a base for our work. Then another important aspect is to show different strategies, how to approach the future. These are three books. They were bestsellers in Germany, and they painting a picture of the future and showing a different strategy, and they're extremely different. We have, for example, here Baumgart with Cradle to Cradle, which tries to imitate the principle of nature, to reuse everything, make a cycle economy. Or Tim Jackson with Prosperity Without Growth. This is a degrowth approach. So he imagines the future with less technology, with less consumption, with less economy, and this is a quite different future imagined. And the last one, Physics of the Future, you probably all read it. I mean, this is just a high-tech vision. It's science, cutting-edge technology, all put together, and it really shows a future which is full of technology, and where technology is the solution to quite everything. And what we try to show in Futurium is that there are these different strategies to the future, and then try to empower our visitors to find their own strategies towards the future. And we do that, for example, in our exhibition, which is sorted in three big areas. And one area deals about this degrowth or people-centered approaches. One shows nature-inspired approaches, and one shows technology-inspired approaches. And they all present facts and kind of a looking glass through the future. And then the visitor can collect different ideas from this exhibition. And then in the end, he can make his own picture or his own path towards the future. The next important thing is inspiration. Because if you think about the future and you try to make a mental image, what does it look like? And for most people right now, the future looks kind of like this. Current pictures of the future are touch screens, green scrapers, AI, autonomous driving, VR. These are kind of the images that are stuck in our heads. And as you know, if you look into the past, these pictures we make of our future is not always the truth or the right approach or the things that are really mattering. And for that, we try to give people new images, new approaches to think about the future, because we want people to think and not just to reproduce these images they have. And for that, we use a concept made popular by Dune and Rabi, two design professors which worked in London at the Royal College of Arts, and now they are in the New School in New York. And they wrote this book, which is quite influential for me and for many people who go the path of speculating and doing design and foresight together. And their aim is really to explore the potential consequences of scientific technology and social innovations. And they try to inform the speculation about the technology and the foresight with a deep consideration of the cultural landscape. And they don't do that in form of reports. They're doing that through design, to making objects, acts, to make spaces, to make experiences. As a design approach, they made this A-B manifesto to contrast that to the usual way we design objects or we design things. On the A side, you have like the traditional approach. I don't know, think of the iPhone of Steve Jobs. Design has to be sleek, to be problem solving, magical. In the end, you shouldn't even think too much about the objects. They are just there, serving you. And critical design is quite the opposite. It tries to give you a way of problem finding, and try to invoke questions, and try to make design for debate. So it's a design that makes you conscious of the things around you and makes you conscious about different paths to the future. That's quite abstract, so I show you some examples from Futurium Lab. This, for example, is the Newsphere, this interesting structure in the foreground, a project by Philip Beasley Studio. And it's a huge sculpture which incorporates principles from nature-based design. So you can see the structure is inspired by bird bones. So they're extremely light, but also robust. And the sphere is also incorporating artificial intelligence. There are many sensors and units, and the sphere can detect you and can react to you. And the vision of Philip Beasley is to make architecture that is more like a forest, like a living system that reacts to you and is alive and not dead as buildings we can imagine today. And these principles shown in this piece, we can then take into workshops and try to explore this concept far more out. And so it's a starting point for new ideas, for a new approach to the future. Other project more on the critical design side is Smile to Vote from Alexander Peter Hensel. And this is a voting booth for making election, but it's a special one because it uses cutting edge technology, machine learning. And it's actually trained with a data set of politicians from Germany. And you just have to look into a camera, and then the system makes a vote for you based on the features of your face. And this is, of course, taking a technology we use right now in surveillance on airports or stuff like that, and used by recommendation engines on Amazon or other big tech players. But it's so far out that you have to think about how far should this technology affect our life, and should it even affect the way we do politics or we do elections or democracy. So where's the end of this convenience we get used to through all the services from the technology side? So you go in the booth and the system makes the vote for you, and most people having this experience then make the connections themselves, how this is related to their own technology use. And this is quite provoking, and after that you of course can go in further discussions. The third project is Cloudfill from Certain Measures, totally different field. This is about recycling, about reusing material in an architectural way. Right now, when we tear down buildings, most of the buildings get landfilled. And I didn't know that before the project myself. About 70% of all the trash we produce is just from the construction industry. So it's a huge pile of stuff, and nearly all of that is not recycled. So it's dead material. And Tobias and his friends from Certain Measures built actually a computer program where they could scan old material and then build new buildings out of that. And they did that actually with this dacha, with this garden house. So they teared down a building, scanned all the material, and then through computer magic, they designed a new building, which is looking like that. And this is, of course, again, a principle our visitors can learn and then apply to own projects, and for that, going their own path towards the future. If you are interested in this project, we have great little videos on our YouTube channel. Check it out. They are great, and they're just 5 minutes for the 12 projects we have in the lab. Okay, next part, tools. In the lab, we have physical tools, but also method tools. And starting with physical tools, we have a little fab lab with 3D printers, laser cutters, electronics, craft material. And this is really important to have a physical space. Even in Corona times, I know we couldn't use that stuff for the last year. But we hope to reuse it shortly, because it's so important to have a hands-on experience with robots, with chemistry, with little experiments where you can find out stuff about new technologies, and where you can build your own future worlds. This, for example, is a picture from a workshop we did with kids between the age of 8 and 12, and it was about cyborgs and body extensions. And this is a really interesting topic because it cuts ethics, technology, biotechnology, very complex. And to make a tangible space for these children, it was totally cool to have physical models, to have theater play, to really act out these visions and fears they have about this topic. But beside that, methods are really important, because most of the foresight methods, especially in the German-speaking realm, are mostly made for experts and not for everyday people. So we built our own little toolboxes. I have 2 here on my desk. There are materials where you can build your own scenarios and make your little future projects. And we try to teach the 21st century skills with these little boxes. You probably heard of them. There are the skills children, but also grown-ups need today. And they come from communication to creative thinking, imagination, to learn to collaborate and turn ideas into action. So this whole field, how to be active and be a future maker, not just a future passive person. And we try to teach the skills, especially to schools children, but also to professionals. And for that, we have this materials. We have the physical card sets, but we have also lots of download material. And of course, this material is completely open source. It's an open education resource. So if you're interested and you want to use the materials in your own endeavor, feel free to do that and hack it, translate it in other languages, build it for your own purposes. That's the way we want to have them out there. You can get them on our website, or you can buy them in the shop. Probably we can put the link in the show notes later. Last point, collaboration, which is very important for us because we want to connect people that are normally not discussing together or not shaping the future together. So we try to put generations into dialogue, for example. This is a picture from a workshop we did about the future of health. And of course, you have another conversation when a 12-year-old girl and a 84-year-old woman with their perspective on the health system, thinking about what should the future health look like. We try to connect expert and amateurs. We try to participate citizens in science project. so that they can work together. In this example, on a measuring system for pollution in cities. We try to co-design with different disciplines, and we always work with prototypes as an inclusive element, because a prototype is a other level than just discussing, and people that are quite shy, probably in the discussion round, then can grow with prototypes. We use crazy methods, create, share experience, and of course have fun, because the challenges we have right now in the future scope, climate change, all that stuff is so heavy stuff that it's always important to end the day with a smile. I'm running out of time, but I just want to give you probably some little impressions from workshops we're doing, so you get a sense how this this whole future making stuff works hands-on. Here you see the students using this future cards from our boxes, and they combine different trends to scenarios and play with the scenarios and discuss different ideas. In the next step, they then decide on one future scenario and really try to enhance it and give it a good feel and make it livable. To expand the vision, we use prototyping. I will fast forward a bit so I can run up my my time shortage. And then in the end, of course, building prototypes. And then we use the tools like the laser cutters and 3D printers and the craft material. So it's really hands-on. In the end, we have something you can show, because it's always so important to have something tangible to explain and to showcase your ideas about the future, because that's so much more colorful than a report or some post-its. Yeah, thank you so much for your time. This is Futurium Lab and my work in a nutshell. And now I'm happy to take questions from you. So I have to figure out this little chat feature. So I can't see any questions in the chat, probably because the chat in the stream thing doesn't work properly. I look in the YouTube screen. Otherwise, I would encourage you to post your questions right now, so I can we can chit chat a little bit. Still no questions.
Yeah, David.
Yes, yeah. I see a question, the first one. But how do you see the difference in imagination from children versus adults? The interesting thing is that children and adults are in a different state of mind. And I think if you put both in the same thinking space, they're quite the same. I mean, I always lived with the slogan, "Don't grow up, it's a trap," because school and university and our professional world, they kind of give us this blockade of being correct and giving the right answers. And children, especially if they're still in kindergarten, don't have that. They let ideas flow and have a lot of fantasies, and then can get more into this combination of facts and fiction and going into this future thinking space. But grown-up apps are not lost. They still can go there, but sometimes it just takes a day or two to warm them up and let them children again. One tip, in the past I used to make workshops with parents and kids in a professional context. So we went to a company and did a foresight workshop, and on the second day they should bring their kids to do stuff with them. And this changed their role. They suddenly were playful parents and had also to think about the future. And this was a lot of fun. And so we cracked the people up. But the more interesting thing is how capable kids are. I showed you this picture from the cyborg workshop, and this is a topic where many teachers probably are afraid to tackle that. And these kids know a lot about the tech world, about emerging technologies, about science fiction, and they can put this stuff together. And this is really amazing. One question about the funding. We are publicly funded, so the government is funding us, and we have the big science organizations in Germany who are also funding us, and some big companies who give us funding. We have some part of our program is commercial, so if you rent out the space for a conference, we of course charge you for that, and with that money we co-finance other program streams. Other question, are you using unfinished artifacts to get students start their own working? Also, are they creating the unthinkable ideas without purpose, for example? We use unfinished artifacts to start people to think. Sometimes we just bring materials and then they start with that and just start with the prototype. I think better than just the artifact is the unfinished idea, to give the workshop visitors or the visitors to the Futurium an example, an idea, a principle how to work, and then they can continue this idea and apply it to their own needs. Though Michael Keen asks, design thinking and speculative design are the heart of your futures approach. Would you have any tips on how this could be done without using expensive infrastructure like the Futurium? This is a very good question, and the answer is yes. The combination of design thinking and future thinking is quite cheap. It's also cool to have fancy machinery, but at the core, you can do it with everyday appliances. So for a start, if you take our future boxes, they're made for schools, and as you probably know, especially in Germany, schools have not so good funding and not fancy fab labs. So you can do everything with everyday materials if you go into prototyping. I think the most important part is that you combine certain qualities of foresight and of user-centered design approaches. The most important thing about foresight is that you're not thinking about the present, that you think about the future, and that you really take the time to imagine a future you want to live in, and try to get out this this space where you just reproduce pictures you heard from TV or radio or movies. And then the quality of design, of course, is that you go through an iterative process where you build a prototype, you test this prototype, and by testing and starting a conversation with other people, you get an idea for a solution. And this can be quite powerful if children thinking about how does the future look like, where everything is where we live in a green economy and everything is sustainable. They then can use the design techniques to think about projects that can start today, and steps they can walk today to get to this future. And yeah, so I think the heart are the methods, and not the fancy Futurium, but it's of course cool to have a fancy Futurium, and it also opens up people, because you are super motivated if you're in a space like that, and you get high energy, which is of course very important. Lieselotte asked, how much time do you leave for prototyping compared to other tasks? This really depends on the workshop and on the people. There are workshops that are totally spinned around the prototyping phase because it's an icebreaker and a conversation starter. And it opens you up for new ideas. Thinking with your hands, doing something physical is very good and very important to open up people. So if you have a group of, I don't know, 10 executives in their suits, and they don't want to get into this creative space, just start with prototyping from the beginning, and then spin the methods and the questions and the future quests around that. This is hard for the facilitators because people won't get along all the time, but this really helps. So prototyping is good, I think, for opening up people, starting conversations, building bridges between I don't know, children, grown-ups, experts, non-experts, to make ideas tangible and concrete. And you can use that in all workshop phases, from ideation to research to presentation of your ideas. And it's not limited to just a prototyping phase on the end. So we're thinking all the time and discussing, and then in the end we build a prototype. We mix that more because it's fun and it's useful. Daniel asked how to make this visionary and future-oriented ideas able to be really implemented in politics and broader society. Sometimes political process seems to be so rigid. You're right. I would say prototyping, again, is important for communication reasons. This workshop videos I showed you at the end, this was part of the science year to green economy. So it was the kickoff with the ministers, and in the end, the prototype was given to the German minister for science and education, and combined with the story from the experts and the children. And a moment like this stucks because it's so concrete and lively. And if you want to get your ideas and your visions across, it's always helpful to have these objects that are telling a story. Of course, politics often works different, and there's a big discussion how to implement design thinking ideas into policy and government processes. And it doesn't work really. It's like, I don't know, people from the business world coming into politics and say, hey, we are so much more efficient, we have to do it the other way. In the end, democracy has its own rules, and design and democracy don't work always well together. In some parts they work together, I don't know, for empowering people to get the ideas across to an elite or to politicians, for science workshops, citizens workshops in the communities where people imagine their community of the future. Then prototyping and design tools are very helpful. If you're getting like in this huge processes on national or supranational level, of course, that's a different and difficult field. But then again, a good story always sticks. Lieselotte asked, should future studies be a part of the school curriculum? Of course. Yes. We teach history. Why shouldn't we teach future? I think, and this shows Fridays for Future for me in the last years, how conscious young people are about the future and how desperate they are for tools to create their own future. There's so much energy and power, and why not use that and give young people the proper tools to deal with that. I think it's also important if you're thinking more from an entrepreneurial perspective. In Germany, we are right now learning how to make a startup culture. And startups are always about visions and new ideas and how to get there. And if people come in contact with foresight tools and design tools and learn how to use them to get the ideas across, this I think this can push the new businesses and new technologies we desperately need to make to get out of this mess we created the last 100 years. So it should be in schools, and it should be a good mix out of education for sustainability, design techniques, foresight techniques, and this would be really great. And we're pushing for that in Germany. And if you're interested to support us or get into the alliance, I'm happy to hear from you again. How large is the organization? The lab team are 6 people, or 7 actually, plus all the facilitators who do the workshops. We do in normal times, not in Corona times. In normal times, we do 300 to 400 workshops a year. And the Futurium are around about 40 people, plus then external personnel who's then running the different events and stuff like that. But we're quite small, but that's not always a bad thing. How do you avoid participants simply projecting forward their current reality and think of new future concepts? You mean this? I assuming that people just projecting what they're experiencing right now and then give it a future look and then make it 2050-ish. Yeah, that's a problem, and that's one of the reasons we have this exhibit in the lab with this probably extreme examples or very far out artworks that are showing crazy future possibilities, and then use that as a base to think forward. So there are some processes where you start with your own needs or your own ideas about the future and then trying to make a picture out of that. We start with impulses, always. Also in the school workshops, we give the participants new ideas, crazy ideas, and then they have to react to that. And that helps to get the future stereotypes out of the process. But in the end, this is a tricky part. I have to admit, it's not always working. So, sometimes you have this workshop where you produce this generic pictures of the future, and that's okay. For the people that are doing this workshop, it's still a meaningful experience. Do you offer training on the methodology at Zukunft? We offer trainings for teachers mainly, mostly for the German-speaking part. We want to establish a professional program in the future and do that then also with a open source or with a online focused approach. So stay tuned. Check Futurium, our Twitter channel. Probably there are some exciting updates later in 2021.
Hello, David.
Yeah. Did you find a question I forget?
No, I think you already replied all the questions. So yeah, thank you very much for showing us your work at the Futurium Lab. It was amazing what you're doing.
Thank you. So have fun with the next talks. I will also stick around.
Thank you. Thank you to all the audience too. We are back in 4 minutes with the next session with Ria Miller from UNESCO. So stay here. We will connect with you very shortly. Bye-bye.
Bye.